What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to the Sooner Surge podcast that tells it like it is. Here to talk about some Sooner basketball. Sooners are 12-0 opening up the season. You got conference season around the corner, first time in the SEC. Before we get started on that, make sure you hit like, you subscribe to the channel, you turn on those notifications so you can be updated when we are dropping more content. Privileged to have Brody, Lusk with OU Insider with us today to answer some questions, just kind of give us an overview of the hot start that the Sooners have had. 12-0. You come back, you're a champions. You've already won a championship this year in a tournament, and the sky is the limit, people are saying, for this team, Brody. I want you to talk about just overview of what you've seen thus far in this team and maybe outlook as they step into conference play right out of the gate with a huge opponent at Alabama.
Yeah, it's been a fun season to cover so far. I do believe that you're going to get the best written basketball coverage on OUinsider.com. We've got tons of information over there on basketball, football, whatever it may be, but specifically basketball. It's been fun, man. I've been surprised, to be honest with you. I know I came on here before the season. I wouldn't have expected the team to start out the way they did. I didn't expect them to beat Michigan, didn't expect them to win the Battle for Atlantis, but they did. I think, what we've seen is this team is different than years past. And it starts with Jeremiah Fears, 18 points a game, 4.7 assists, and he had that 30-point game against Michigan, where he hits the 4-point play to win the game. He's a different player. He'll be a lottery pick probably. And this is just the type of player that OU has not had in years past. And I think that's one thing that gives me confidence going into conference play. Another thing would be, there's just so much more depth scoring on this team, right? Like Jeremiah Fears went for 30 against Michigan. He's had multiple games where he scored 20. Jalen Moore's had 6 games where he scored 20 points. Duke Miles just had 29 against Central Arkansas and had 17 against Michigan. And Kobe Ellis has had games where he scored 26. So it's something like that that gives me confidence with this team going into conference play, where it's a gauntlet. I know the Big 12 was the best basketball conference when OU was over there, but I think the SEC is the best one this year.
Yeah. Hey, Brody, thanks for joining us. But question for you. They've been doing this 3-guard lineup, Miles, Elvis, Fears. In your opinion, as you head into SEC, maybe what are going to be the challenges of that in the SEC? Or do you think, because it's great right now, but as far as when you get in SEC play, what are you thinking on that?
Yeah, they're using it. When you look at the difference between how much they use this lineup and how much they use any other lineup, it's actually crazy. So that 3-guard lineup you mentioned is playing 23.7% of the time. The next most frequent lineup is Jeremiah Fears, Duke Miles, Glenn Taylor, Jalen Moore, Sam Godwin. That is being played 5.6% of the time. So the amount that they're using that is pretty. It's honestly crazy. But I think it's going to continue to be the most frequent lineup. I don't expect I think you'll see more Glenn Taylor with that group. But the challenge is you're smaller, right? You have Kobe Elvis at 6'1", Duke Miles 6'2", Jeremiah Fears 6'4". You're smaller, so some of those bigger, longer teams are going to cause matchup problems. But again, Michigan was a bigger, longer team. They had 2 7-footers down low, and OU was able to win that game. So I think you're going to have to play it a little bit less. I don't expect it to play as much as it is now, but that's going to be by far and away their number one lineup that they keep going to. I don't expect that to change, but there will be some challenges you get with that. Also, some positives you get with that.
Yeah, Brody, I want to ask you just about whenever you see this team going into SEC play, obviously they're ranked now number 11 in the country or somewhere along those lines. What do you think this team can realistically do? Because you talked about it being right now the best conference in basketball with Alabama, Kentucky, Texas A&M. You have a bunch of schools that are ranked in the top 25. What do you think the ceiling is for this team in conference play? And do you think they can sustain a 500 record or higher throughout conference play as well?
I think they could. I think they could go 9-9. I think they'll go 8-10. That's kind of been my prediction. And nothing non-con play has changed that prediction. That's just because the SEC is as good as it is. But yeah, I think expectation wise, you have to expect this team to go something like 8-10 or 9-9 or 7-11. Anything less than that is a disappointment, right? So, I think a lot of the discourse among Oklahoma basketball fans this season has been, well, they had non-con success, but they had that last year, and then they fell off in conference play. I don't think this team will fall off in conference play, and I think the biggest reason why I don't think they will is Jeremiah Fears, right? And so, look, I'm expecting 8-10. That would kind of be where I'm expecting them to fall. They definitely
Where do you think that ends up in SEC?
It probably 8-10. And that's hard to say because we have not seen the SEC be as good as it is right now. But I'll put it this way: 8-10 aside, I think Oklahoma is in the upper middle tier of the SEC. Right? I do not expect them to be up there with Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, Texas A&M, Florida. Right? I think they're probably more adequately positioned in the tier with I think they're better than a Missouri. They're right there with like Mississippi or Ole Miss. They're right there with Texas. So I think that's like upper middle tier is probably where I would expect them. So I think Oklahoma should finish 6, 7, or 8 in the SEC play. That's my expectation.
Hey, you go back to Porter Moser's time here at Oklahoma, and deservedly and rightfully so, there's been some criticism. Okay, this team hasn't been a tournament team. It's been fair to say Porter Moser has not lived up maybe to the hype. Okay, with all that aside, though, one of the reasons for the past failures has been the turnover number. This year, turnovers are down, and that has to be. I mean, in my opinion, as a fan watching it, when the ball's in Jeremiah Fears' hands as much as it is, there's a confidence that you as a fan get watching it. Like there's just so much control there on ball handling. If they're going to trap him, he knows what to do to get out of the trap. He knows which pass to make. And then you got a guy like Kobe Elvis who's been really good in the pick and rolls. He's got a good pocket pass that he makes. And you also got Duke Miles that you mentioned and some other guys. Goodine the other night on the 4-point play by Fears. Goodine, where the play was set to run to him, made a great pass out of a trap in that corner. I mean, they've just been better at taking care of the ball. Right now, Brody, they go 10 deep. If you play Wagau, however you pronounce his name, sorry, off the bench, you go 10 deep. So, one, what do you notice about the turnovers or lack thereof? Is it you accredit it to just that guard play? And two, will they go more deep? Will they add any of those other guys that are injured? Maybe you can attest to that, and maybe you don't want to, but I just thought I'd ask that.
Yeah. So starting with the turnovers, it has been much better. I mean, offensively, their turnover percent is 16.2, 95th in the country. Pretty good. Defensively, 21.2, 44th in the country. And then you look at how much steals they're forcing. They're forcing their steal percentage is 14.2, which goes for 10th in the country. So they're forcing a lot of steals, and they're not turning the ball over, which is a huge recipe for success. But Jeremiah Fears has had games where he's turned it over, like against Providence, he turns it over 8 times, but they still only end up with like 12 turnovers on total. And then he's done a pretty good job cutting his turnovers down recently. But I think it kind of speaks to the experience this team has. You mentioned Bryson Goodine making a good pass out of a trap. That's someone who's, near 27 years old. I mean, 25. So Bryson Goodine's played a lot of college basketball. Duke Miles has played a lot of college basketball. Kobe Ellis has played a lot of college basketball. That can be said for everyone except Jeremiah Fears and Dayton Forsythe and Luke Norweather. So I think the experience has definitely helped. I think Porter Moser is doing a really good job with Jeremiah Fears of like letting him go out there and play and not making him, sometimes you can be like, hey, you turn it over, you're coming out of the game. He hasn't done that, and it seemed like Fears has just kept getting more and more comfortable, and with that has came a decrease in his turnovers. With the injury situation, I've spoke in depth about this over on OUinsider.com, but look, at this point, I'm not expecting Oklahoma to add Jadon Jones or Jeff Wonkwo back to the team. I mean, if that happens, great, but we're kind of at the point where I wouldn't expect it. I would expect it to just be this 10. I think they've kind of got some things figured out with their bench, right? Like it's going to be Glenn Taylor's going to play starter minutes, even though he's coming off the bench, which, by the way, that has surprised me too, because They added Glenn Taylor in July, which is just
Yeah.
incredibly impressive. Then you've got Bryson Goodine. If he's on, he'll play quite a bit. If not, he's probably in the same tier as a Dayton Forsyth. And then Mo Wagey, Luke Norweather, just depending on the night. So I think it's going to be those 10. I don't know if it'll cut. I mean, Moser likes the 8-9, so you would think it would cut down to that, but it hasn't. It didn't cut down to that against Michigan. Didn't cut down to that against Oklahoma State. So I'd probably expect it to remain that 10. But yeah, with Jones and Wonkwo, I don't have any expectations for them.
Hey, Brody, you talked about Fears. Y'all have talked about him quite a bit. His ability to pretty much do anything he wants to do. I mean, he can score mid-range. He can get to the hoop. He can pull it for three. But one thing I notice in certain games, when they get out and run, this team's really good. We got Jalen Moore and you got Jeremiah Fears when they're really running the ball off turnovers or off missed defensive rebounds. I feel like maybe you can attest to this. I feel like they're doing that a little more often this year. Of course, might not equal that in the scoring total for the year, but I just feel like they're trying to do that more because they got guys that. I mean, Jalen Moore, I'm not stepping in front of him on a fast break, and not many people will. And then Jeremiah Fears is just so good, and his strength when he drives, using his body, just so good.
Yeah, and he's really good about forcing fouls. I mean, his fouls drawn per 40 minutes is 75 in the country. So, I do think they're purposely trying to play faster. That was a question. I mean, we talked about that back when I was on with you guys before the season started. But when you have a guard like Jeremiah Fears who's going to push it, a guard like Kobe Elvis who's going to push it, it does help you play faster in transition. But for Jalen Moore to be at his best, he's probably got to be in transition a lot. Like that's where he gets a lot of his points. And so I think the pace at which they're playing with, which is 179th in the country, has been pretty good. The thing to me has been they're playing fast at times, but it's not out of control. And sometimes with the true freshman point guard, it can get out of control. It hasn't got out of control pace-wise. So, I think the pace they're playing with. And another thing, Duke Miles, his ability to attack the basket has really impressed me. Like, looking back at Oklahoma's past guards, Grant Sherfield, Javian McCollum, Milos Uzi, and they're all solid guards, but none of them to me are like really going to attack the basket, get downhill, things like that we've seen from both Duke Miles and Jeremiah Fears. So, I think pace-wise, it's been intentional, and it has worked really well. You'd think they would keep kind of the same pace going into conference play.
Yeah, I think whenever we talked to you before the season started, you said that you think the ceiling of this team, if it was to make March Madness, was round of 64, maybe round of 32. They can maybe win 2 games if they're lucky. But now, as you've seen this play and the guard play that they have, how deep of a run do you think this team can legitimately make now?
Oh man, look, the first two SEC games will tell you a lot about that. With number 5 Alabama at Alabama the first game, and then number 13 Texas A&M at the LNC. But right now, I think this is a team that can win a game or two in the NCAA tournament. That's what we've seen. Like Michigan's an NCAA tournament team. Everyone like Arizona's an NCAA tournament team. Louisville is probably right around there. But yeah, I think, and the thing about Porter Moser is he's always been a good coach in tournaments. Like they've won 3 out of their last 4 non-con tournaments. He's had a lot of success in March. The problem has just been he can't get to the NCAA tournament. So if they get there, I definitely think this is a team that could win 2 or 3 games. But I think the difference between them winning 2 or 3 games or making an actual deeper run than that would just be, can they sustain the fact that Jeremiah Fears, Duke Miles, Kobe Elvis, Jalen Moore can all go for 20 on any given night. And then 2, do they figure out their bench rotation a little bit more? Because right now it kind of seems like they're going to roll with, whoever's on, which is fine. But do, 2 or 3 of those guys, like Glenn Taylor has, separate themselves from the rest. So, and you got to stay healthy, right? That's another thing that they struggled with last year. So we'll see how they look in SEC play. But right now, I do think this is the team that should get to the round of 32. They can definitely win a game. And then I think they could make a deeper run, Sweet 16 run or something like that.
Yeah, and hey, many Sooner football fans, or some of them said 12-0. It's not the football team that's 12-0. It's a men's basketball program that's 12-0.
Yep.
Huge thanks to Brody with OU Insider. Check out the content there at OU Insider. He does a great job covering Sooner basketball. You can't get better content than what he's providing. So thanks for coming on. And it'll be SEC showdown time with Bama right around the corner. Make sure you subscribe to our channel here. We appreciate you watching this video and like and comment. We'll see you next time.